Okay, so what I'm going to work on next is taking the steering stem off. I've got to replace this steering stem because the thread is actually damaged on the top and it's pretty much unfixable. So I'm going to do that, but in the process of doing that, obviously I'm going to have to take out my original little unique design of zip ties that I have going on here just to keep that headlight in place. So I'll take that off, and I want to actually work on the steering stop and actually TIG weld some aluminium blocks to here. I've drawn a black line, as you can see just in here, where I'm actually going to put it. I'll take this headlight off and show you a bit closer. Alrighty, so now that I've got the headlight and cluster of zip ties out the way, you can kind of see what I was talking about with the line. It's this line here, which is the one I'm focusing on. Focusing. There we go. Yeah, so it's this one here and also the other one on the other side are the main ones that I want to concentrate on, because they're the ones where the actual block is going to be put, I guess, this way. I'm going to shave this off and weld the block on that way and also this way. For that to actually hit this, which is the original stock steering stop. So that's all I need. It doesn't need to be anything more. Obviously over time it's going to wear thin and you know, possibly do something similar to this. But this gap here also needs to be closed up. When you buy the bearings from All Balls, they give you a bunch of washers, spacers, and I've got a couple here and here which don't necessarily need to be there. But I knew I was going to change out this steering stem when the new one arrived. The new one is just down there from Cognito Moto. So yeah, nothing major, pretty simple stuff, apart from the welding, because if you don't have a welder, I don't have a TIG welder here. So I've got a friend of mine who has a workshop who I'm just called him and he said he's available today. So I'm going to take this down to him. I'll ride this down on my bike, put it in my backpack and then just take it down to him, and he'll hopefully do it on the spot for me while I wait. So let's dismantle it and get it started. Sometimes the tools that you have just don't do the job that you want them to do. Unfortunately, I can't fit that in there, and it's just not going to go. So what I've decided to do is try and come up with a different way. There's a couple of ways I could attack the problem. Obviously I've got to put a socket or something round under here to support the edges, so that I don't want it to support obviously on those two sides, because it'll just crack it. It'll break. Well, it might do. So there's a couple of ways I can attack this problem. Obviously I could just chop that, but then if I have something that needs to be really close, then I've just chopped off, you know, however much off that stem, which I don't want to do. I don't want to have to recreate another one if I don't have to. So I've just been playing around with this, and I found that, I'll get you nice and close so you can see. So I found that if I take this off and hook it into the edges, obviously I've got to brace it so it doesn't rock, but it actually goes in those edges. As you can see, it actually fits perfectly. The actual C-section fits right over the angle, which will support it enough for me to put something on this. So the idea is great in theory, but as soon as I try and press down, what's actually happening is, because I've got it on an angle, one side's pushing the foot that way and the other one's pushing the foot that way, which is in turn twisting it and forcing this actually out of its positioning, because it's actually not pressing straight, it's pressing on an angle. The idea was good, but it's unfortunate that those legs are not completely solid, and it just twists. So plan B. But what I've decided to do is try and spin these guys around. This is the original position, and I'm spinning them around. Obviously took the bolts out, and hoping that I can somehow maybe just put a couple of longer bolts in and then rest this on the inside shelf here, which should give me enough room. Like I said, I'm running out of options just purely because of time. I don't know how long my friend's going to be at work today, so I don't want to miss him, and want to try and get this done today if I can. So even with the new way of doing it, I'm still not 100% sure if it's going to work with these longer bolts going through that way, but it's still left me with still a little bit too long. So what I'm going to do is just bite the bullet and just cut it. It's only a little bit, so it's not much that I have to cut, but once I cut that, then I'll definitely be able to make this work. Well, as long as these bolts hold up, I'm hoping that'll be all good. Although I'm in a rush to get this done, I stopped and had a bit of a think about what I was doing here and putting longer bolts through, and then putting this piece actually on that platform there. So essentially it would be sitting like so. Putting it there and having longer bolts, and then putting something here and pressing down on it, I can see would be pushing this here down and twisting those bolts. And although being in a hurry is one thing, but damaging stuff for being in a hurry is kind of silly, and that's when you make mistakes. So I was like, screw it, I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to chop this. I'm just going to leave it as is. So I took it down to my friend, and he actually managed to press it out with a massive pan brake machine, and he got the actual shaft out, but in the process got his socket stuck, which we managed to pry off. And then after a little bit of time, cut out some flat bar, which was 10mm, and cut it into small little blocks, and cut the angle on them so that they could fit the angle of this triple clamp, and then just TIG welded them on, and they worked out perfect. So I've now just gotten home, and I'm going to put that steering stem back through with less spaces and try and fit this up and see how it goes. This is probably a little bit welded a little bit longer than I need. I may still have to trim this a little bit depending on how it hits. It's obviously going to be hitting here and here, so if any of these parts touch, then I can trim them up, and I can also trim it lengthways. They're way longer than what they need to be, but that's no dramas. It's easy to cut aluminium, like I said earlier on. So I'll get stuck into putting the steering stem back in. So midway through putting the front end back together, and my card filled up, so I had to stop. I only have 2 cards at the moment, 2 memory cards, so I just removed it over onto the computer, and then I'm now just deleted or reformatted the card, and I always have that thought, have I saved it to the computer correctly? Because it's a lot of footage that you would lose if you formatted it and you haven't copied it over. Anyway, it's done now, so if it's not there, it's not there. Anyway, I'm going to continue putting this front end back on. So if you purchase one of these Cognito Moto triple clamps, then they come with this little design. I don't know if they're all like this, but this is essentially how this one's set up. And someone asked me, because they couldn't see where the actual bolt is that holds the actual fork in place, so I thought I'd just shoot this quick little bit of the video and show you how they work. And if you can sort of see, as you do this Allen key bolt up, it pulls this tight, which essentially holds that fork in place. The only downside to them is they are a little bit fiddly. Come back here. Is they're a little bit fiddly to get in place because they just keep spinning on you. It's no big drama, but the little trick, because I've done it, I've put them in and out a few times, so the little trick that I found is just have them on that kind of angle rather than straight up and down. Have them on an angle, I guess, sort of, if you can imagine, that way ever so slightly, so when the fork comes up it just pushes it in position. It's not that easy to get them in that position, but like I said, a screwdriver or some sort of scribe or something just to poke down there while you're manipulating it up in place, and she's good to go. So just thought I'd explain that if that helps. So after all that dismantling and pressing out the steering stem and putting it all back together and welding these two little stops or lugs on, do they actually work? So yeah, this is probably going to get anodized. I'm not sure if I want to powder coat it just purely because of the thickness. I just think that anodizing it will be pretty cool, and I'll anodize it the same color as this, so I'll get it all dressed up nicely and just shave off what I need to shave off and clean it up and make it look pretty, and then black anodizing. And I think then the front end's pretty much sorted with when it comes to anything that I need to weld or cut or shave or like trim. The actual headlight bracket is actually going to be a bracket. It's going to be clamped onto the side here somewhere. I'm still looking for a good supplier of those, something that will actually suit the bike, something that I like.